Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology in the third house, or the third house in astrology. Now, as far as what it rules, the third house is associated with communications, short journeys, local transportation, early education, siblings, cousins, neighbors, mobility, and assimilating information. Now, first and foremost, look at the sign that is on the cusp of the house, because, of course, that would flavor. Basically, that really what it does. It gives a certain style to and certain energy that is associated with that the particular house. In this case, the third house, it could represent certain things that are associated with house. For example, I have a zodiac sign Cancer on the cusp of my third house. Now, what it is for me, I don't have any siblings, but I have two cousins that one of them has a Cancer ascendant and the other is a Cancer sun. The sign that is on the cusp of the third house can reflect, I believe, sometimes literally the certain zodiac sign of people that are associated with that in connection with the meaning of that house. Now, it could also indicate I might have had a lot of experiences with Cancer neighbors, which I did. There was a time where I had a number of people that were uh, that had a sun in Cancer, actually, that were in my neighborhood, oddly enough. And the thing is, another thing too, and it's really, and it could be like the sign that is on the cusp of this house is it could be like the how in the how you go about as far as the matters with the third house, and just general energy that is associated with it. And the thing about it is, if you look at, like, me having Cancer on the cusp of the third house could also indicate that I have a very retentive memory. I also have Mercury in Cancer as well, and that obviously plays dividends in me being able to recollect things connected with the past very well. And the thing about it is, and a lot of my communication is associated with the past. The Cancer can be connected with the past. I'm also often what just reminisce about things that are associated with the past in my communication. Now, the sign on the cusp can be, and could be the how, in terms of how we go about third house matters, and reflects certain energy with certain situations that are associated with the third house. Now, and the thing about it is, like, if somebody had the zodiac sign Capricorn on the third house, it might be somebody that might speak a very orthodox, conventional manner and be very disciplined in their communications. It could be like the kind of like that way, that style, the how that is associated with that particular house. Now, the thing too is, it's also important to look and see if there's any planets in the house, because of course that could flavor the energy of the third house. Now, the thing about it is, when you look at, like in my case, I have Mars in Cancer in the third house. Now, the thing about having that placement is that, and I also have Sun. Also want to say I have the Sun conjunct the third house cusp from the second house. Now, looking at this energy, I mean, Mars in the third house. Mars can be adversarial, and I don't have any siblings. Mars being in the third house, sometimes you won't. Sometimes that could be an indicator of not having any siblings, especially if there's other factors or elements in the chart that can confer or reaffirm that. I also have the ruler of my 12th house of restrictions in the third house of siblings, so that obviously did not help matters either, as far as me whether I was going to have siblings or not. And also, it could indicate issues. I mean, Mars in the third house can indicate issues, contentious situations with neighbors, siblings, cousins. I did have some battles and actually some physical confrontations, to be honest with you, in my neighborhood with neighbors, and I would say at least one of them was actually a sun in Cancer, actually. So I think that's odd. I mean, it's interesting having Mars in the zodiac sign Cancer in the third house, and that is how it may have manifested and panned out with me. Now, having the Sun also conjuncts my third house cusp from the second house, so it's something where so the interpretation really is very much like having the sun in the third house in your chart, and that could give a very Sun in Cancer conjunct the third house cusp can manifest in having a very strong focus and being driven toward very dedicated and devoted communications, and ones where I'm pursuing communications with a lot of tenacity, basically. And the thing is, it's also important to look at the aspects to the third, whether it's a third house cusp or planets that may be in it. Now, having I have Saturn that makes a very tight sextile to my Mars in Cancer in the third house. My Saturn is in Taurus in the 12th house and makes that sextile to the Mars in Cancer, which can it can give more discipline to that Martian energy. Mars in the third house by itself can be someone that can be very impulsive and impetuous in their communications and really sometimes think without speak without thinking sometimes. But the fact that I have Saturn making that tight sextile to my Mars, I do believe that helps matters in terms of being more disciplined in those communications. Now, another thing is that looking at this as well, it's also important to look at um, the ruler of the third house and see what house that falls in, because that is where you may be bringing that third house energy to. Now, the ruler of my third house is the moon, because I have the zodiac sign Cancer on the cusp of the third house. The ruler of it, being the moon, is posited in the first house in my natal chart. The one way that may manifest and pan out is that people may see that I like to communicate and be very communicative on a first impression, and I have it with the moon, and the moon is in Gemini, which of course is very voluble, and there could be that emotional need to be able to express oneself, and the fact it's in that first house is making it more emphasized and accentuated. Thing about, and it could be where I'm bringing that communications into people I knew from my early childhood. It could be about new beginnings that are associated with this energy, with communications having a lot of new beginnings connected with it. And the first house is also, I mean, it's connected, can be connected with a grandmother. Now the grand I could say the grandmother, though, was one that I didn't have much communication with, but at the same time, I mean, the first house can also be, I mean, associated again with your first impressions, your outlook, and also about, and the first house is also the physical. I mean, you're talking about yourself. It could be where I'm bringing a lot of that energy into matters which are for my own, personal gratification as far as communication goes. And having the moon in Gemini certainly can accentuate that, because you're talking about the most loquacious sign of the zodiac. So anyway, well, the next thing I would get at is transits that involve the third house can be significant as well, because the transits they can manifest in events and experiences, often spontaneous, that are associated with the house. Now, it's like if somebody were to have transit Uranus hit their third house. This could be somebody where they begin to perhaps have very spontaneous ideas, original, ingenious, and innovative thinking. It could be that they might begin talking more about Uranus matters, such as things connected with innovation, computers, electronics, astrology, aerospace. It could be somebody that might have more of an interest in things that are futuristic, connected with local transportation, like these flying cars that are starting to be produced. Something, I mean, and let's say if you have, let's say if transit Neptune is making an adverse aspect to your third house cusp, it could be at that point in time you might be experiencing where you're thinking really your judgment might be off a little bit, or your thinking might be a little bit more nebulous, or even if it hits the third house, transit Neptune hitting the third house may be a point in time where you really need to decipher things that are written, and make sure you're seeing the fine print at this time. And it's easier, and also your mental energy might be a little bit depleted or dissipated at this time, especially say if there's other things in the chart that might reaffirm this, such as transit Neptune making an adverse aspect to your natal Mercury. Now, and last but not least, I want to talk about, as far as the third house goes in astrology, progressed aspects in a progressed chart that would involve the third house. And in a progressed chart, and let's say, as an example, you have Jupiter in the second house in the progressed chart. That could be very fortuitous as far as monetary matters go, especially say if it's making a lot of good aspects to other planets in the progressed chart. If it's making say a sextile or trine to your natal Venus, that could be very auspicious as well as far as monetary matter. I'm sorry, I said the second house. If Jupiter is in, let's say Jupiter is in the third house, if it's in the third house in a progressed chart, that could be a time where it could be very auspicious as far as matters with communication, short journeys, local transportation, siblings, cousins, neighbors. It could be very prosperous period for perhaps writing or matters with communication at this time. And it could also, and say if it's making a sextile or trine to Venus in that progressed chart, that could indicate that there would be a period where you could make more auspicious for making money as far as third house matters may go. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.